Hello, this is Jordan, and this is Quinn.
Hi there.
So today we are doing an exploration of the global history of honey, which is located at manuka-science.org.
Yeah, and it is just a massive topic.
It really is. We are basically going to take you on a journey through the 10,000-year evolution of the human relationship with bees.
Right, and it is a fascinating story, because it covers agriculture, medicine, religion, and the incredible physics of the hive itself.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think the defining framework for this entire 10,000-year narrative is really the biological and physical marvel of the bee. I mean, the insect itself has not changed at all. What has evolved over millennia is simply our human understanding of the bee.
Yeah, and, as someone who manages a few thousand commercial colonies up in North Dakota, my perspective is very hands-on.
Right, you are out there in the field.
Exactly. I'm always looking at how we optimize production and how we keep our foragers healthy.
Which is a huge job.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But you look back at history, and humans started out literally risking their lives just to get a handful of honeycomb.
Oh, yeah, just dangling off cliffs.
Right, going from that wild cliff-hanging scavenging to managing massive apiary operations today, well, it is just a colossal leap for us.
It really is. And we are starting today by looking at how early humans transitioned from scavenging wild hives to, organized stewardship.
Which was not easy.
Not at all. The sheer danger of the task proves that beekeeping has always required a really high level of intelligence. We can actually see this in the earliest known depiction of humans collecting honey.
Oh, the cave painting, right.
Yes, exactly. There is a really famous rock painting at Cueva de la Araña, which translates to the spider cave.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is near Valencia in Spain, and it shows this human figure clinging to ropes on a sheer rock face.
Sounds terrifying, honestly.
Totally. They are reaching into a cavity while bees are just swarming all around them, and they have this little collection basket hanging below.
If you really look at that painting, you realize that is not just some random person who stumbled into a bee tree and got lucky.
Oh, definitely not.
Like, think about the innate defensive biology of a feral hive.
Right, they are aggressive?
Very. A colony is highly protective of its resources because, well, that honey is their only fuel for winter survival.
It is life or death for them.
Exactly. So approaching a feral hive requires a really calculated strategy. The painting shows deliberate, thoughtful techniques.
Yeah, you see the engineering.
Right, we are seeing rope making and container craft and a planned approach to a heavily defended space.
It is amazing.
It really is. This was not an accidental discovery. It was an established, engineered tradition.
And we see that tradition evolve into early technology fairly quickly, actually. Archaeologists have found beeswax residues in ancient pottery fragments all across Europe and Anatolia.
So they were storing it.
Exactly. People were not just eating honey on the spot to survive anymore. They were actively transporting it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they were storing it in these purpose-built vessels. And then from there, if you move over to ancient Egypt, well, things get incredibly sophisticated.
Oh, the Egyptians took it to a whole new level.
They really did. Beekeeping in Egypt was an entirely state-administered industry. The cultural significance there was just immense.
I read that they even used it in their titles.
Yes, the pharaohs actually used the title bee king.
Wow.
Yeah, and they used the hieroglyphic symbol of the bee to represent Lower Egypt. For them, the bee symbolized order and productivity and just really sophisticated design.
You can truly see the scale of it, too, when you look at the relief carvings at the Temple of the Sun at Abu Ghraib.
Those are incredible.
They are. Those carvings date back to around 2400 BCE. And if you were standing there in ancient times, you would see a production line that honestly rivals modern agriculture.
It was a massive operation.
Huge. The carvings show a complete systematic production chain. You have workers harvesting the comb, and then others smoking the bees.
Right.
Yeah. And then teams straining the raw honey. And the final stage is sealing it securely in clay jars for long-term storage.
The detail of them using smoke is really fascinating from a biological perspective.
It really is, because it is the exact same chemical principle we use today. Like, when I am out in the bee yards in North Dakota, I use a modern smoker.
Right, to keep them calm.
Exactly. It keeps the foragers docile while I inspect the frames. But it is not magic. Smoke actually masks the alarm pheromones that guard bees release when they feel threatened.
It interrupts their communication.
Yes. And it also triggers a sort of forest fire response in the hive. It makes them gorge on honey.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and when their abdomens are completely full of honey, it physically makes it harder for them to flex and sting you.
So the ancient Egyptians were manipulating the insect's own chemical communication system.
Yes, they absolutely were. And that is why I always push back when people think ancient societies were, primitive.
Oh, sure.
Running a large-scale apiary operation takes the kind of logistical math that would make a modern supply chain manager sweat.
Definitely.
You have to manage the bloom cycles along the Nile and maintain all that clay equipment and coordinate a highly specialized workforce.
And they were tracking the outcomes of that harvest very closely, especially in the realm of medicine.
Right, the medical uses were huge.
Oh, massive. If we look at the Ebers Papyrus from 1550 BCE, which is one of the oldest surviving medical texts in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, honey appears in over 500 formulations in that text alone.
500. That is wild.
It is. It was used directly on lacerations and severe burns, and the Sumerians over in Mesopotamia were doing the exact same thing.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, they used the word lal for honey, and they actually rationed it out to their workers and explicitly used it for moist wound therapy on infected injuries.
They recognized the practical value completely.
They really did, because honey creates this low moisture, acidic environment where bacteria simply cannot survive.
It is nature's perfect bandage.
Exactly. But as we move forward in history, we see ancient texts began to define the precise ecological perfection required to produce honey.
Right, it becomes symbolic.
Yeah, this really embedded the bee into cultural and religious history in a profound way.
If you grew up hearing ancient stories, you are probably very familiar with the famous phrase, a land flowing with milk and honey.
Oh, definitely. Everyone knows that phrase.
But if you look at that phrase through an ecological lens, it is actually a statement of really rigid ecological math.
Wait, how so?
Well, you cannot have both milk and honey without a perfectly balanced ecosystem. Milk requires managed livestock grazing on sustained pasture.
Right.
And honey requires diverse flowering plants and completely stable pollinator populations.
Ah, I see.
If you have overgrazing, the flowers disappear and you get no honey.
That makes total sense.
And if you have no bees, the pasture does not reseed and you get no milk.
Exactly. You really need healthy soils and adequate seasonal rainfall and diverse flora in overlapping bloom cycles.
Right. Everything has to work together.
Yeah, if you mismanage the land, the whole system just collapses. So a land flowing with milk and honey is not just, poetic imagery.
Right.
It is a precise description of perfect land stewardship.
It really is. And the very first appearance of this exact phrase happens in Exodus chapter 3 during the story of Moses in the burning bush.
Oh, right.
Yeah. At the time, Moses was living far away in Midian. He was working as a shepherd for his father-in-law, Jethro.
Okay.
And one day, he leads his flock near Mount Horeb. Suddenly, he sees a bush blazing with fire, but the bush is incredibly not burning up.
Which is a profound and just arresting image.
It truly is. God calls to him from the burning bush and tells him to take off his sandals because he is standing on holy ground.
Wow.
Yeah, Moses is terrified. God then reveals his name as I am. After that, God promises to deliver the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt and bring them to a good land flowing with milk and honey.
That is such a powerful narrative.
It is. And these stories are found in the Bible and are still taught today in Sunday school lessons, like the ones at the Gospel Resources Hub.
The specificity of that promise is what is so striking to me.
How do you mean?
Well, it is not just a vague promise of golden riches or something. It is a promise of an ecologically intact, thriving destination.
Absolutely. And you also find a lot of highly practical beekeeping knowledge hidden in other ancient narratives, too.
Oh, like what?
Take the story of Samson. He finds a feral bee colony occupying the desiccated cavity of a lion carcass.
Right, the lion and the honey.
Yeah, and as a beekeeper, I read that and just nod, because bees will build comb in absolutely any dry, secure cavity once the soft tissue is completely gone.
They are very adaptable architects.
Very. And then you have Jonathan finding a dripping honeycomb in the forest. That shows a real understanding of how gravity and ambient temperature affect beeswax.
Oh, because of the heat.
Exactly.
Yeah, wax softens significantly at higher temperatures in the sun, causing the honey to literally flow out of the comb.
Right. And then you also have Jacob instructing his sons to use honey as a high-value diplomatic gift when they traveled to Egypt to buy grain.
There's like currency.
It was a vital strategic asset. I mean,
Yeah.
You only give honey to foreign dignitaries when the stakes are literally life and death.
That is so true. And while these ancient texts recorded bee behavior and ecology, classical civilizations eventually began to formally study the physics of the hive.
Right, the Greeks got involved.
They did. Aristotle conducted a really systematic study of bees in 343 BCE.
Wow, that long ago.
Yeah, he documented the division of labor and the seasonal cycle of brood rearing. But the sheer mathematics of the hexagonal honeycomb is where the physics get truly incredible.
The geometry of the comb is mind-blowing.
But wait, is it really an innate biological trait, or are we just sort of projecting our own math onto nature?
Oh, it is entirely innate.
Real.
Yeah, if you leave a feral colony completely to its own devices, the bees will construct each individual cell at a precise 13-degree upward tilt.
13 degrees exactly.
Yeah.
Every single time. And this specific angle prevents the heavy wet nectar from flowing out before it can be dehydrated and capped with wax.
That is genius.
It is. Furthermore, the hexagonal shape utilizes the absolute least amount of wax to enclose the greatest possible volume of space.
So it is perfectly efficient.
It is a mathematical optimization so exact that human mathematicians have studied it for centuries.
And the Greeks were still heavily relying on that mathematically perfect honey for medicine, right?
Yes, they were. Hippocrates actually prescribed honey mixed with vinegar, which was known as oxymel, for chronic respiratory issues.
Oh, interesting.
He also used it extensively for treating severe skin ulcers and burns.
The Romans took all of this to the next level with their hive management, though.
They really scaled it up.
They did. The poet Virgil actually wrote extensively about apiculture. He outlined practices like moving hives geographically to follow different seasonal bloom cycles.
Oh, like migratory beekeeping.
Exactly what we do today. He also wrote about culling weak colonies to prevent disease from spreading to the rest of the apiary.
That is very advanced.
And then you have Pliny the Elder mapping out honey terroir. He documented the distinct flavor differences between Spanish rosemary honey and Attica thyme honey.
So they had a highly advanced agricultural system.
Very.
But then, this rapid progress hit a massive destructive roadblock during the Middle Ages.
Ugh, the medieval era. From a modern management perspective, this period brings me absolute frustration.
I can imagine.
Monasteries needed massive amounts of beeswax for liturgical candles. And the mead halls across Europe needed tons of honey to brew fermented drinks.
So the demand was huge.
Incredibly high. But their technology was terrible. They used something called a skep.
A skep.
Yeah, a skep is basically an upside-down wicker basket.
Yeah.
And they coated it in cow dung and clay to weatherproof it.
Well, that sounds completely impractical for actually observing the health of the bees inside.
It was way worse than impractical. It was a terrible era for beekeeping.
Why is that?
Because the bees built their comb directly attached to the wicker walls of the skep. You could not pull the comb out to inspect the hive for disease.
Oh, so you are just flying blind.
Completely blind. And when it came time to harvest the honey and wax, you had to kill the entire colony.
Wait, really? The whole colony?
Yes. They would use sulfur fumigation to exterminate the bees, just so they could safely cut out the comb.
So they destroyed their best colonies every single year just to get the harvest.
Yes, it is heartbreaking. Imagine if an apple farmer chopped down his most productive, healthiest apple trees every single fall just to pick the fruit.
That is insane.
And then he just hoped he would magically find new seeds in the spring. That is exactly what medieval Europe was doing with bees.
That is a terrible strategy.
From a modern perspective, where my entire focus is on careful queen breeding and preventing colony loss, this is a completely backward business model.
I completely agree.
You're systematically killing off your strongest, most productive genetics every autumn. You have to rely on catching wild swarms every spring just to start over.
What a nightmare.
It is a nightmare scenario for any serious operator.
Well, to escape that destructive harvesting cycle, humanity really had to crack the code of the bees' innate architectural rules.
They needed a breakthrough.
They did, and that singular breakthrough led directly to modern scientific beekeeping.
Because the Middle Ages left beekeeping at a total dead end. To stop killing their strongest colonies every year, someone had to figure out how to look inside the hive without destroying it.
Right.
And the secret to that was not a new tool. It was a biological law the bees had been using all along.
Exactly. In 1851, an engineer and minister named Lorenzo Lorraine Langstroth made a massive breakthrough.
Ah, Langstroth, the legend.
He discovered something called the bee space. Langstroth observed that bees maintain a highly consistent gap of exactly 9.5 millimeters between their comb surfaces and any adjacent structure.
9.5 millimeters. every single time.
Every single time.
It is essentially a rigid biological zoning law.
It really is. If the gap is smaller than 9.5 millimeters, the bees view it as a drafty crack.
Right.
So they just glue it shut with the sticky resin called propolis.
Which is incredibly hard to scrape off, by the way.
I bet. And if the gap is larger than 9.5 millimeters, they see it as prime real estate and fill the void by building an unpermitted addition of extra honeycomb.
They just build everywhere.
Yeah, but if you leave exactly 9.5 millimeters of space, they leave it completely open as a navigational passageway.
That discovery of the movable frame hive changed absolutely everything for us.
It is the foundation of modern apiculture.
It really is. By building wooden frames that maintain exactly that 9.5 millimeter gap all the way around, the frames become completely removable.
Because they don't get glued down.
Exactly. They do not get glued to the box, and they do not get bridged with extra comb.
That is brilliant.
Today, this allows beekeepers to pull frames, inspect the brood for disease, and harvest the honey without ever harming the colony.
It is completely sustainable.
Yes, and this exact invention is what allows my modern operations to drop in pollen sub over the winter to feed the bees.
Right, you can just open it up.
Yeah, and it also allows us to utilize new technology to prevent drifting.
Drifting, what is that?
Drifting is when bees get lost and wander into the wrong identical hives in a crowded bee yard. It spreads disease and weakens colonies.
Ah, I see. So the Langstroth hive basically shifted apiculture from a brutal seasonal extraction chore to a highly refined year-round management science.
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
And before we get to the modern medical science of this, I want to mention something important for you to check out.
Oh, sure.
You can find the global history of honey and Manuka and wound science by visiting manukawoundscience.org.
It is a great resource.
It really is. Now back to the science.
Well, with the movable frame in place, the industry could finally focus on consistency and safety and purity.
Which changed the game for medicine.
It did. This eventually allowed for pharmaceutical-grade honey production. We bring this history into the modern scientific era with the rigorous study of Manuka honey.
Right, the really high-end stuff.
Exactly. For centuries, ancient healers knew honey prevented infection, but they did not know the actual mechanism behind it.
They just knew it worked.
Right. Then researchers Peter Mullen and Thomas Hemlow made a massive discovery. They identified a compound called methyl glyoxal, or MGO.
MGO is the ultimate game changer in the industry. But how does it actually work on a, microscopic level?
Well, MGO is the specific compound responsible for Manuka honey's non-peroxide antimicrobial activity.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think of a biofilm as a microscopic fortress wall.
A fortress wall.
Yeah, bacteria build this wall to protect themselves from our immune systems and from standard antibiotics.
Right, making them super resistant.
Exactly. MGO acts like a chemical siege engine against that wall.
Oh, wow.
It actively breaks down the proteins of that fortress wall, exposing and destroying the bacteria hidden inside.
That is incredible.
It provides a stable, measurable antibacterial effect that destroys those biofilms and prevents severe wound infections.
It is so specific.
It is. By mapping the terroir of the Manuka bush and really understanding the bees' enzymatic processes, modern science proved that the ancient Egyptian and Sumerian healers were right all along.
It was just incredible how it all comes full circle.
It really is.
You have Sumerians applying honey to wounds thousands of years ago, and today we are using the exact same substance, just with a molecular understanding of the siege engine breaking down the fortress walls.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought about primary design.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you look at the innate complexity of the bee, something remarkable stands out.
Okay.
Despite 10,000 years of human civilization evolving from painting on cave walls in Spain to conducting molecular terroir mapping in modern labs, the bee itself has not changed at all.
It has always been exactly what it is.
Yes, it has always been a perfect, mathematically precise architect.
That is profound.
The bee was utilizing 13-degree angles and exact 9.5 millimeter tolerances thousands of years before humans even had the words to describe those measurements.
That really is the perfect takeaway for you to chew on today. We went from scaling sheer cliffs to building pharmaceutical-grade operations, but the true genius has always been sitting right inside the hive.
Absolutely true.
If you want to keep exploring this fascinating world, you should definitely check out the other sections on the site. Be sure to look at ancient hive architecture, varietal honeys beyond Manuka, sustainable pollinator habitats, and research-grade apiary equipment.
There is so much more to learn.
Keep questioning, keep learning, and pay close attention to the small things flying around your garden. Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.